Hi there, I'm Nick Reynolds. I'm the head of jazz at Chichester University. This is a third tutorial on more advanced techniques in solo bass playing. It's an overview of the approaches that I use rather than getting into the absolute details. And on this tutorial I'm going to talk about movable chord shapes that I use on the bass, as well as what's called implied chord substitutions. And the way I'm going to do that is to just take you through a bit on Stellar by Starlight that I played again on as a solo. So when I play Stellar, I'll just play a little bit of it first of all. Got harmonics obviously, but when I do this, we have what we would call a superimposed substitution over that chord. And in fact, if I go through that, the first bit is of Stellar is just a minor 2/5, and then technically it should just go like this, just a C minor 7th, F7. But to make it more interesting, I'm drawing on some ideas that John Coltrane was looking at. Coltrane, when he was listening or playing over kind of more modal or static harmony, would often imply other harmonies stacked in intervals across it. And in fact, the whole giant steps theme that he used, you can actually hear him using his free jazz improvisations later on in his life, particular things like Interstellar Space, one of his last ever recordings, where you can actually hear him implying over the drums all sorts of kind of harmonic patterns that he was drawing off music theorists like Nicholas Slanimsky. Now, to nail it down to a kind of fun technique, when I have that C minor 7th and F7th, instead of just doing that, I'm interested in perhaps doing something slightly more adventurous. So for example, I could do something like just this. I'm going to ignore the 5 chord altogether and just come up a series of diminished intervals, but using this static kind of shape. So I have kind of 4 movements up thirds. So if I play that from the beginning, and then hit the F7th, then I've got a kind of interesting movement. Equally, I could do, and these are various things I've experimented with, what we would call the kind of the descending major thirds of John Coltrane's giant steps sequence. So that might be something where we move through an augmented triad: C, E, A flat, and up to C. That gives me a kind of interesting movement, which has got a kind of geometric shape to it, and I'm also holding this kind of static pattern again, and that gets me up there in three movements. But again, it's quite an interesting movement to use, just to again imply some kind of tension and into then kind of a release. So, and I don't generally do anything particularly exciting with the chord shapes. I will just sort of like hit something that's fairly obvious, because the interest now is in the actual movement that I'm creating. Similarly, I could go up in whole tones, for example. So again, so that was a diminished one. I went up a whole tone idea. Now again, you don't want to overdo it because it gets all fussy and you lose any sense of narrative within the actual solo if you throw endless techniques like this into it. But just to imply it now and again just makes it much more exciting than just playing normal 2/5/1s. Again, this is sort of more of an advanced technique, but quite fun to play around with. So those are superimposed kind of substitutions that I often use over sequences that are relatively simple, static harmony, for example, or kind of 2/5/1s. The second thing I use a lot is our movable voicings on the bass, and because of the way the bass is tuned in fourths, there are a number of fairly easy shapes that we can use to move around the bass. So if I play a little bit again of Stellar and add some of these movable shapes, and then I'll show you what I'm doing. We do. Here's my diminished. on this section, or I could do, or so what I'm using there is just an augmented triad, which is just 1, 2, 3, and I can move around this kind of augmented sort of shape. I can do wider intervals, or I can do, you know, like closer intervals. Basically, I can rake up it, or sweep pick it. But basically, it again gives me a very, very simple digital pattern to move harmonically up and down the bass and create some sort of interest. Now, there's nothing wrong, of course, with leaving space as well. So I could do something more like this. So I would do that as well to create contrast, but if I was doing that middle section of Stella and I was using movable shapes, the first one I can use, as I say, is an augmented triad. The second one, now here we can use a fourth voicing, all right, which is literally a straight line on any 3 strings, okay? Now, again, this is influenced for me by McCoy Tyner, particularly in the Coltrane era, when Tyner pretty much redefined sort of the kind of piano harmony and started using stacked fourths and various things like that with Coltrane. So on the bass, if I play from a C, for example, and I wanted to, I can play a kind of blues scale just using that shape. But obviously I can play modally. I can also play that, I can play all of it if I want to, and again I'm kind of creating more and more interesting sounds, but I do like, and I can actually move around again playing melodies just using fourths. I think on the solo I even did something, so I'm kind of alternating bass notes again to create some sort of momentum and interest. But I use that kind of fourth idea over minor chords, major chords. So that's another nice kind of movement. And the final one I tend to use is diminished patterns as well. So for example, when I've got a C diminished, there's an obvious move we can make with a diminished, which is just to go up these minor third, which is how diminished is constructed anyway, a kind of stacked flattened thirds, the chord. But there's also some really nice kind of ones. For example, if I said played a C7 flat 9, I can actually play this shape like a major triad, because the diminished is actually constructed also of a series of kind of like enmeshed major triads, and I can do this idea. So I can use that over dominant 7th chords, and similarly I can also use this shape as well, which is another diminished shape, and again add some inner voicing again to make it sound more exciting, and even voice it within a diminished scale. So basically, I mean, it's taken me a long time to assimilate all these kind of different ideas and then try to put it into something that sounds like it is a piece of music rather than just a series of sort of like connected techniques. But they're all little tools that you can start employing in solo bass playing. And again, if you listen to the solos that I've put on the channel, you'll hear a lot of these techniques coming in over and over again, just because I like them a lot. So there you go, thank you.